I want to start this episode by explaining a couple of things. It's not a car review. Even though I'm driving this, and I have to say I do love it, the Polestar 2, this is not about the car. That said, there is no way I could do what I'm doing today without the car. Because where I'm going, well, in Australian terms, it's just down the road. In European terms, it's unbelievably remote. I just want to point out I'm driving it across the bush in Australia. Really a long journey, and it's really easy. Just want to get that out of the way. What I'm going to go and see is kind of big and needs a lot of space. And as you may be able to tell, although I'm in some woodland at the moment, but as you may be able to tell, out there, honestly, not making it up, there's a lot of space.
Our 3 free YouTube channels on EVs and clean energy tech are funded by our fun-packed Test Drive-tastic events in the North, West and Greater London, and our events down under. Next up, Everything Electric North 2026. Plus, check out everythingelectric.store for merch and much more. Back to the episode.
So one day in September of 2025, renewable energy, that is wind and solar, generated 78.6% of all the electricity that's used in Australia along the eastern seaboard, not Western Australia, everything down to Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, South Australia. So that's the record at the moment. That record is only going to get higher. And in places like South Australia, it's already well over 100% very, very regularly. But some of that power came from rooftop solar, which is really common in Australia. But the majority came from huge solar installations like this one, which was put in by ACEN Australia, who also do wind farms as well as solar. And this is just outside Uralla in New South Wales. And around me are just under 1 million solar panels. Over there is a massive battery. And right here is the Everything Electric Tech Show. So why have I driven 673 kilometres in an electric car to come and see this facility? Well, regular viewers will know solar and batteries, we've been talking about them for years. It's becoming a bigger and bigger thing around the world. But on the scale that we're seeing here, the truly colossal scale of just under 1 million solar panels, 400 megawatts of generation on this site. Why has it become such a big thing? Well, it's very much down to economics as well as everything else. The cost of that individual solar panel behind me has dropped 90%, 90% in the last 10 years. That really makes a very, very big impact on installing something this big. Also, it took about 18 months to put this in. If you look at the time it takes to install a gas peaker plant or a new coal burning plant, or in particular a nuclear plant, you're looking at many decades in certain times. And in the case of Hinkley Point C in the UK, pretty much a lifetime it's taking to build that thing. If you want really large scale energy generation, if you want to build that, the cheapest way, without any shadow of a doubt, is solar. Wind is the next most cheap, but that's getting more expensive, but solar is remaining incredibly economically attractive, which is why this sort of stuff is happening.
There was one landowner who thought that this would be a good idea and got together a group of 7 or so landowners and made an approach to us probably 7 years ago or so, or maybe longer, or further away than that. And then we started to work through and the planning process. And it's definitely a collaboration between the landowners, community, First Nations, to sort of start building up what we are able to do. And then you put that through into the planning system. It takes a period of time while you're getting all your other things ready, and then we started construction of New England Solar back in COVID time. So that was a challenge in itself. Anyway, we got through all of that, and it went into operations at the end of 2023, 24, start of 24. So it's been operating for a couple of years now. That first stage 1 that you saw on site. And then stage 2, we're underway with getting various parts of that ready to move into construction in the next couple of years. And stage 3 was the battery energy storage system, which I think you might have seen on site also. So it's 200 600 megawatt hours with 2-hour storage. And we've got planning permission for stage 4, which is a 1200 megawatt 4-hour battery.
So what about the environmental impact of putting literally 1 million solar panels on a sheep farm? I mean, it's just, what about the agricultural use of the land? I mean, God, we're covering the world with solar panels, even though it's much less space than we use for golf courses. Forget I said that. It still is a sheep farm. Look at the sheep. They're really happy here. The fact that the panels are here actually has a positive effect on the grass that's growing underneath them. Because these panels are tilting and following the sun all day, different parts of the grass get sunshine on them. They also get rain runoff. There's actually better grass growing because there's solar panels on here.
We've got some partnerships with various universities to do some studies on exactly that. What's the microclimate underneath those solar panels? And just on a basic level, you know, when we don't allow lambing underneath the panels, just because the farmers have suggested that would be a bit complicated. But the lambs go in when they're very young, and so it stops things like eagles coming in and taking the lambs. So they do the shearing, and then it might be a cold spell, and they snuggle up then to the power conversion units because they're a little bit warmer. So there's lots of advantages other than just land. The grass is better, they've got the shelter and things like that. And what the landowners note is that it just enables them to proactively plan their farming, knowing they've got that consistent income, because, you know, bushfires, drought, flooding, it's all very real, and farming's a tricky game, and therefore any certainty that you can have in your income makes a big difference. So there's different landowners who have then been able to use that income for looking at different bits of research, you know, how they do carbon credits or how they do other bits and pieces, you know, changing their farming techniques for the future generations that they might not have really had the capacity to think about if they hadn't got this that revenue stream, certainty of revenue stream. So it does work both ways, and I think it's important that we had that on the table right from the start, so right from the planning process, right through the design. You might have noticed the pitch between trackers was quite wide so that you could get vehicles down quite easily to muster the sheep. There's no cabling above ground, there's no structure above ground between rows, things like that, to proactively make it an easier site to do the sheep grazing. And I'm sure there'll be lessons learned that get fed into our future projects as well.
But if you want to supply electricity to the grid on a big scale after the sun goes down, then you need some batteries. And what you can see behind me are some batteries, quite a lot of them. That is 400 megawatt hours of electricity storage you can see behind me. That is going to be commissioned in the next few weeks. It will come online later this year. We're seeing this whole place is still a construction site. It's really extraordinary what's going on here. But the important thing is, when I started making the fully charged show 16 years ago, that would never have happened. The cost of batteries was insanely high. No one would consider the economics of doing that. It didn't make sense. It was cheaper to burn gas. It was cheaper to burn coal. It was cheaper to do a lot of other things. You wouldn't do it. The price of batteries has dropped, I'm just checking my numbers now, 75% since 2015. So really, in the last 10, 11 years, it's made this sort of thing possible. So they have a critically important role. And the bigger they are, and the more we have of them, the better. Now you may be asking, what is the point of generating all this beautiful solar electricity if it's got nowhere to go? We're in the middle of farmland in New South Wales. The big population centres are on the coast. The peculiarity of the Australian grid is that it's very long and thin. It stretches down from Melbourne and Victoria in the south all the way up to northern Queensland. It's a long, thin strip where you need to be able to supply electricity. That's where the vast majority of the population live. So, you know, generating this power here, what's the point of that? Well, it just so happens that literally going across this farmland are one of the main transmission lines that goes from Queensland in the north down into New South Wales, further south from here. And so that is why this solar farm is located here. They didn't have to build new transmission lines to join it up to the grid. It was already here. So they had to build that, which is a huge substation, so they can transmit the power into the grid. And so this electricity is going all over the eastern seaboard of Australia, which is kind of nice.
There's always resistance to these projects in the planning phases, before things are built, before everyone really knows what's going on. I guess it's just people's natural aversion to change. And then when you're building those access roads in, you would have come in off of the highway there. Road upgrades are always difficult for people along that road, when they've got to get their kids to school and things like that. But once we worked through that and we were into construction, which was a peak workload of around 400 people, it really did nestle in the valley there and didn't really cause too many people too much heartache, to be honest. I think a lot of people see the advantages for building these partnerships. They see business being brought back to the regions. They see long-term employment for First Nations people, the community benefits funds and things like that. It can invigorate a community, and it's a shame that not all of those stories get the publicity that some of the detractors do, but I guess that's a factor of life.
From the beginning, the New England Solar Project was built with the support of the Enewan First Nations people. It was understood by the Enewan people that the area Uralla had been used for thousands of years as an important meeting place for Aboriginal people, and during the field survey works, a number of cultural sites and items were discovered which have since been preserved.
Initially, it's part of the planning process. You need to go out with what we call our registered Aboriginal parties and check for artefacts and check for cultural sites. The locals knew it was there, but it was kind of a myth. They very much value that site, quite rightly, and all of the other sites dotted across the farm that we've fenced off. But more importantly, I think, is really the ongoing relationship and the full-time employment. That's what makes the biggest difference. We employ the crew to maintain all of those sites across the project. They're learning how to be a contractor on that scale of project. That was a lot of upskilling. They appreciate being able to work on country, and they'll now be able to transfer those skills to other projects that build up in the area.
So in the global Sun Belt, it already makes enormous amounts of economic sense to do this, what I'm seeing over here, to build a huge solar farm with enormous batteries. It makes so much more sense to do that than to pay for a gas peaker plant or a coal plant or a nuclear plant, all of which take decades to build and always need fuel. A gas plant needs gas all the time. Not just when you build it, but for the rest of its lifetime. This doesn't need fuel. This makes huge amounts of electricity and is getting cheaper by the day. There is no argument. If there ever was a battle about which is the best technology to use, forget the environment, forget global warming, forget the fossil fuel industry, if there was ever a battle to discover which is the best way of generating electricity, this stuff has won in spades. Well, that's it for this episode. I really hope you've enjoyed it. I really want to thank Ace in Australia and Scott Green, who have facilitated all this. It was really kind of them. I particularly want to thank Polestar for giving me this car for a few weeks so that I can come and see this incredible installation. And please do tell your friends about what we do on the Everything Electric Tech Show. And as always, if you have been, I'm watching the road and there's nothing on it. Thank you for watching. Now visit electricvehicles.expert, where you can follow everything electric and keep current with Clean Technica, The Driven, Electrek, and many more.